idea of tolerance and plurality to them. Ask them, you want to do this in Birmingham or in London or Manchester, wherever it might be, Walsall. When can we hope for a synagogue to be opened in Saudi Arabia? When can we hope for a Christian church to be opened in Saudi Arabia? Or even a Shia one, as a matter of fact, which they consider to be a vicious heresy. When are you going to condemn the blowing up of mosques in Iraq? I'm an atheist. I wouldn't put a bomb in the Samara Dome. I have a natural human resistance to profanity. It comes from Antigone. It comes from Sophocles. It doesn't come from monotheism. They applaud these acts of atrocity and blasphemy. They have no concept of a reciprocal relationship on this. They say, you concede to us, and we will concede nothing to you, and you should be proud to have us in your midst. Insufferable. Insufferable.
Where do you believe that the resistance to this trend can be seeded and developed? And you want the law of blasphemy abolished. I agree with you. I think it should be abolished. But where do you see the powers of resistance to this worldwide trend coming from?
I see one capitulation after another at present.
You're that gloomy?
Yeah. I mean, if countries like Holland and Denmark, the most tolerant, broad-minded, open, multicultural, all this, have their filmmakers and intellectuals and journalists targeted for murder and their embassies violated, security violated in dictatorship countries by mobs stirred up by policemen. I think that should give people a warning. I mean, there are a lot of fools, there may even be some here, who say, well, the United States deserved it because it's a big country and very arrogant and very proud and imperialist and so on. Yeah, well, how do you feel about the treatment of the Dutch and the Danes? No, you have to realize, which people are very slow to do, what the nature of the enemy is.
Are you as depressed?
And not give any inch to him. No excuses. Don't want to hear intellectuals in my country make excuses for this. That would be a start.
Are you as depressed?
No, I'm not depressed. I mean, I actually take Christopher's point that some of this is inexcusable, and I don't think in any case that I would want to make any excuses for their behavior. But what I would want us to do is to live with the world as we have it. Recognize that we can't tell other people what to believe. We are ultimately responsible for our own beliefs. We are responsible for what offends us. We cannot tell somebody not to be offended by something we've done if they choose to be offended. And this is ultimately a question of whether we can coexist in a world with different scales of belief, different intensities of conviction, different degrees of disbelief or unbelief in the case of some, and at the same time manage to get along. I mean, I'm afraid that certainly from where I sit in the United Nations, we are actively trying to promote what we call a dialogue among civilizations, which is all about trying to focus on the things we respect in each other, in other cultures, and minimize the areas of friction and disagreement. This, unfortunately, is one of the, religion and the question of blasphemy and so on, goes to the heart of what is the most difficult thing in relations amongst different nations, different societies, different cultures. But there are a lot of other things that we can talk to each other about and engage with each other over. And therefore, because of that, I'm not depressed. I think there will be changes.
Shashi,
there will be evolution in people's attitudes.
You're talking about something much softer, I think. You're talking about an interfaith dialogue, as you talked about a multi-religious community. What about the most important minority in the history of the world? Those who have never believed in God, those who believe that an ethical life is possible without religion, those who have studied the stuff and know that Judaism is derived from ancient race myths, and that Christianity is a plagiarism of that, and Islam an even worse plagiarism of the two above, who don't want it. There are lots of us. Actually, the largest branch of the humanist movement in the world is probably in India, which has a wonderful secular tradition. We have to be insulted and outraged every day by what we see and what we read, by slaughter and murder. Slaughter and murder and barbarism and insult and superstitious nonsense. We do not reply in kind. We don't say, we'll go and kill you if you go on insulting us like this. Do we get no credit for saying this? When has anyone ever said, what's it like to be insulted, as someone who thinks that civilization is a real thing? Why is it always interfaith? Why is it always interdenominational? Why can't we say that all of these cults are equal and equivalent glimpses of the untrue?
But what... I'm going to invite you to join this discussion in a moment, but just let me put this to you. You speak of the UN and these attempts to deal with this increasing mob willingness to take offence and use violence. But you are like talking to like in the United Nations. You're civilised, affable, tolerant wings of all the different faiths and of no faith.
More glimpses of the untrue, Christopher.
I'm afraid.
This is the UN, Christopher.
Yes, ask the people of Darfur about that.
Well, exactly the
They
point
played
I'm
it the
making.
Kofi Annan way in Darfur, and now there's almost no one left to kill.
But the point I'm...
I'd
another
rather have been
conversation.
unilateral myself.
I'm talking
Hate
about...
to say it. Even preemptive would have been better than watching the mass slaughter by Arab Muslims of African
is
Muslims.
there
Our
a-
African brothers and sisters are being killed as we speak in thousands every day in the
Is
UK.
there-
And we
is-
decided to play it the Kofi Annan way.
Is there a unilateral
It'll
option?
be over soon.
Is there a single country on earth that's prepared to go to war over these people in Darfur? The solutions
If
that are
anyone
being
proposed
found...
it, you know what would be said.
Well, I'm
No,
just telling you.
no, we don't get into it. Let
we
me
shouldn't
just...
get into
I
that,
want
but
to
that's
make...
Well, I don't
a
know,
point.
I'm beginning to feel...
Christopher, I'm asking... I'm making the point. I'm making your point for you, Christopher.
Oh,
that
darling.
that the UN are having conversations and being very civilized together, but they are not effective in arenas where people are killing and murdering because they are living in a different world. There is no association between the debates within the UN and what goes on in the killing fields. Is that not the point you were making, I would think? I mean, how can you be effective?
Well, I'd like to think we have been effective. I mean, there's a slew of Nobel Peace Prizes on the walls of the United Nations to point to various effective cases.
Teresa and Henry Kissinger.
That's right. Well, we're not resting on our laurels or theirs.
Two merchants of death and superstition.
It's so difficult to argue with Christopher because I enjoy him so much. But the fact is...
You see why he's a diplomat and I'm not.